we'll just go ahead and begin. So, let's see. I would like to state for the record that today is August 24th, 2020, and my name is Ben Bauman. I'm here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm speaking via phone with Otto Bonahoom, who is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Is that all correct?
Correct.
And we are doing an interview for the Indiana Oral History Initiative. So, just starting off, when and where were you born?
I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, November 5, 1930.
Okay. And what were your parents' names?
My parents were Bedia, B-E-D-I-A, J. Bonahoom, and Louise M. Bonahoom.
Okay, interesting. And where was your family originally from? Were you guys in Indiana for a long time or somewhere before that?
No, my dad was the superintendent of the Indianapolis Sears Roebuck store at the time I was born.
Oh, okay.
And my mother's family is from Williams County, Ohio, which is up northwest Ohio, only about 35 miles from Fort Wayne.
Interesting, okay.
And actually, my family was living in Indianapolis, but my mother wanted to come up to Fort Wayne to deliver me because she was only 20 years old, and she wanted her mother and her own doctor. So she came up, and I was born here in Fort Wayne on November 5.
Okay, sure. And where was your dad's family from before they started living in Indiana?
Well, they were all immigrants. My dad's family and my mother's family were immigrants from Lebanon.
Okay, interesting.
And they lived most of them lived in, Dad was born in Toledo, Ohio, and they lived there. I have, actually, when I was born, Lebanon didn't exist.
Okay.
We were Syrian then.
Right.
And then I've always kidded everybody that until 1948, I told everybody my ancestry was Syrian, and suddenly it was Lebanese.
So, things change fast, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Did you have any siblings?
I have two younger sisters.
Okay. And how would you describe your childhood growing up?
Well, we lived here in Fort Wayne, middle class family, not rich and not poor.
Right.
Just got along. I went to Catholic grade schools and a Catholic high school, Central Catholic High School, and we are a very close family. I had two of the very best parents you could have. My dad was an exemplary guy who was quiet and wise, and my mother was also. And I always laugh and tell everybody that I'm nothing like my dad.
Okay.
I try to be wise, but I'm not nearly as quiet as he. My dad was a guy of few words, but he instilled in me an understanding that the world didn't owe me a living, and that if I wanted to do something, I had to figure out how to do it.
Right.
And I did that. It's quite interesting. He never fought a battle for me, no matter what happened. I'll give you an example. I was a very good student. I was an honor student my whole life, and I came home one day, and it was in high school, and I said, "This nun hates me. She's going to kill my average."
Mm.
And my dad said, "Son, you're going to find people like that in your life all the time. You better figure out how to win her over."
Wow.
And I did. The lady the woman that I'm talking about became one of my closest friends for over 50 years.
Wow.
I had two fantastic sisters of Providence who are from near Terre Haute. I'm trying to, suddenly I can't.
No worries.
Pardon?
No worries. Don't worry about it. That's
Yeah. Anyway, and I corresponded with or met those two sisters several times a year for 50 years. They
Wow.
both lived into their 90s, and they were just fantastic people.
Wow.
I had a very blessed childhood.
Sure.
I'll just give you an example. I went to college at Marquette University, and I came home after my first semester as a freshman, and I had the English teacher had assigned a term paper. Well, I was a fifth in my class, and I had never written a term paper. I didn't even know what one was.
Right.
And I called up the Sister Constance, who was still teaching at the Central Catholic in Fort Wayne, and I told her my problem. She said, "No problem. Come on down. Saturday morning, meet me at 9 o'clock in the convent." I went down there, and she taught me for about 7 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And by the time I got done, I understand what a term paper was, and how to write one, and what a footnote was, and how to write one, and the whole.
That's
the
incredible.
Whole thing. I tell that story because I just think it's remarkable.
Yeah.
What she did. I took it all. I went back, wrote my term paper, got an A, called her up and said, "Well, it worked."
That's incredible. Wow. Jeez.
I was actually I never had any money, by the way. My dad was all right as far as financially, but he could not spend a dime on my college education, and even though I got good grades at that time, the best scholarship I could get was a couple of $100 a semester.
Ah, okay.
And I got it, and I got that in law school. But in undergrad, I went to Milwaukee and lived with my aunt and uncle, who lived only 12 blocks from Marquette University.
Okay.
Where I got a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Laws. And I did it with no money from my father at all. And I worked, and as I said, I got a couple of small scholarships.
Right. Wow. And where did you go to law school?
I went to Marquette.
Okay.
I had intended to go to Indiana. My original plan was to go to Marquette and get my undergraduate degree.
Right.
And I did. I have an AB in philosophy.
Okay.
With a minor in Latin, French, and English, which is a little unusual.
Yeah.
A couple of my lawyer friends, when they found that out, they said, "My gosh, your minor had nothing to do with law." And I said, "Well, I didn't need it for law."
Right. Interesting.
And so, but instead of going to IU, I got up to Marquette, and I liked it so well. And also, to be honest with you, Ben, I was a big man on campus at Marquette.
Oh, okay.
If I'd have gone to IU, I'd have been another freshman.
Yeah.
And that's what talked me out of it. I thought, I
Right.
don't want to start over.
Yeah.
I'm an IU fan, actually, but I just I couldn't do that.
Sure.
I was president of the Marquette Student Union, which is what that time was their student organization.
Yeah.
And it was just no way was I going to go back and be a freshman at any university.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like you were very well connected at Marquette then.
Oh yeah, I actually 4 of my 6 children went to Marquette.
Wow.
One went to Purdue.
Okay.
My daughter is a cum laude pharmacist from Purdue,
Oh, okay. Interesting.
and we've been very we've been very fortunate. We all of the children have been successful and happily married, and
Sure.
I've got 15 grandchildren and 9 great grandchildren.
Wow. That's fantastic. Now, in your childhood, did you have much understanding about your family's political views?
There was not much politics, except actually I can tell you what happened.
Sure.
We never talked politics at all, but my dad, after he left Sears Roebuck, he took over a family restaurant, and he ran the restaurant for 15 or 20 years, and
Wow.
I worked in it from the time I was 11, and at that time, Dad was a Democrat.
Okay.
And one day, he had his accounting books for the restaurant in his arm, and I said, "Where are you going, Dad?" And he says, "Well, the Office of Price Administration." This is back during the war.
Yeah.
In the 40s, he said, called me and said that I'm overcharging, and he said, "So I got to go show him my books." And he says, "I got to explain to them that they can't make me charge the same thing. If I buy a tomato for 15 cents, I can't sell it for 15 cents because I can't make a living."
Right.
Well, he figured that was just normal, and he expected them to agree with him. And of course, he got down there, and they absolutely didn't agree with anything he said.
Wow.
And he came back and became a Republican.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
But I've been a Republican my whole life, just about. But I mean, I did a lot of political speeches in college, in high school and college.
Right.
But I'm not a. I like to think that I'm a Republican, and I believe in conservative values, but I also have spent my life in both in politics and in normal and regular life, helping people.
Right.
Which I think is an absolute requirement for life. And,
Sure.
And that's what I did when I was in the legislature, and even today, or all throughout my life. I've been involved in. I was the co-founder of the Martin Luther King Montessori School.
Oh, okay. Wow.
For 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in the inner city here in Fort Wayne,
Yeah.
which is still in existence, and I helped found the Matthew 25 Health Clinic, which is
Okay.
also in existence, and I was their attorney for 25 years. They're now a big, large, free health clinic here in Fort Wayne, and what I liked about it is that we were able to get doctors and dentists and health people not just to give money, they donated their time.
Yeah.
And don't forget, I'm talking way back in the 50s.
Right.
It's quite a while ago. And then the last thing I've been involved with for over 30 years is the Vincent Village Home for Homeless Families. And I've worked that I was the president and the co-founder and for 30 years, and I'm not on the board anymore. I got off after 30 years, but I'm still active with them, and I'm very, very proud of what we've done at that time. During that time when we started, we had one little old house that the Diocese of Fort Wayne gave us, and that's all we had, and it held about 7 or 8 people, as I recall, and that's not very big when you're trying to take a family in.
Right.
And we now have about 42 or 43 rehabbed homes, very nice homes, in the northeast or the southeast central part of Fort Wayne, which is the lower income part of Fort Wayne, and we rent these homes to these people according to how much money they got, and we send our caseworkers to help them so that they don't slip back into homelessness.
Wow.
The homeless things that we do is we help them become self-sufficient so they don't have to be homeless. We help them get a job. We help them get education. We help take care of their children. And we take in families. Almost nobody else takes in families. And that's crucial.
Sure.
If you're going to help people. So I'm very basic. You can probably tell. I'm very pleased with that because I can see what it's done. We just recently partnered with a builder, and we helped rehabilitate the old Coca-Cola plant in the area that I'm talking about. And so now the entire place has I don't know how many, but a great number of brand new apartments that are priced so that people can move into them.
Oh, okay.
That's in the same area that's maybe about 6 blocks from our main office.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm very pleased. I think Fort Wayne is a tremendous city. They do lots of things for all of its citizens, and that's primarily what has kept me involved.
Sure.
As I told you, I'll be 90 in a couple of months.
Yeah.
But I'm still, I'm very pleased to be working with these people, and I'm still working with them, as a matter of fact.
Okay, that's great. Wow. Yeah, that's all really impressive. Fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Actually, when I joined I was a young Republican, Ben, and I was a precinct committeeman and a ward chairman. And at that time, I was in my late 20s, and I ran for the General Assembly when I was 32.
Wow.
And I got elected. Actually, I was the second highest vote getter in Allen County.
Wow. Okay.
The only person that beat me was Congressman Ross Adair, who'd been a congressman for 20 years. So I only ran for one. I got elected and I only served one term, which we'll talk about later. But because it was too much of a strain on my family. I couldn't. I had 5 young children, and I couldn't leave my wife and run down there to Indianapolis.
Sure.
For all the work that they did.
Yeah. Now, growing up, you mentioned a little bit before. What was it like growing up during World War II?
It was actually none of us really. It was pretty normal.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't anything unusual. Of course, you got to realize you're so much younger than me.
Sure.
Everybody was in the same boat. I mean, we're all about the same. I had good friends, and even though most of them, their families were economically better off than I was, nobody gave a hoot.
Yeah.
Nobody paid any attention to it. So, we all just associated together, and we didn't. It's totally different, however, from today, especially monetarily.
Yeah.
I've watched my grandchildren say to their parents, "I need $10. I'm going to the movie," or $15. I'm going to go. Man, that's just out of the question in when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm not unhappy with the new generation. Don't misunderstand
right.
me, but it's just so different that
yeah.
It's hard to imagine that anything I wanted. My dad I'd say, "Dad, I want to do such and such." He'd say, "Sure, son, just go out in the backyard and shake the tree, and whatever falls out, pick it up." I said, "Of course it was," but that's the way. Dad had a great sense of humor, and he also was very frugal. But he never made me. I made all my own decisions. He insisted that I make my own decisions.
Right.
Wouldn't make one for me, no matter what I did. He listened to me, and I made several of them that were they worked out all right, but they were scary kind of decisions. But I said, "How come you didn't tell me what to do?" He said, "You wouldn't have listened to me anyway, son. You have to learn how to make decisions on your own." And I said, "Boy, what if I'd have made a mistake?" He said, "Well, you'd have to live with it, that's all."
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Wow. Now, what was your first job out of law school?
Well, when I got out of law school, I was 11th in my class, and I thought I would be able to get a pretty good job, but I got out in first when I graduated, I had to spend 2 years in the Army.
Okay.
I graduated from law school in '54, and then I got drafted immediately. 3 months later, I was in the service, and I should tell you about that. I guess I got drafted and did my basic training, and I got sent to Germany.
Okay.
And to finish out my 2-year term, and I wound up being a clerk I was not an officer.
Yeah.
At that time, they weren't giving out first lieutenant direct commissions like they apparently do now, and a lot of times did at that time.
Right.
But they offered me one after I got in for a year, but I decided I wasn't going to accept it after I'd done all the dirty work that a PFC does.
Yeah.
So I got sent to Germany, and I was stationed in Nuremberg.
Okay.
And once I got this clerk's job in the legal affairs department, I was engaged at the time to my wife, and I wrote her a letter and said, "You might as well come over here. We'll get married, and that way we'll get to see Europe together."
Yeah.
Because I've got an 8 to 5 job, 5 days a week, and you. There's no point in me. I don't want to see Europe without you. So that's what we did. I'm the oldest son in the family. She's the oldest daughter in the family. Nobody was at our wedding but us.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And some friends that I knew in the Army. And so we were married in Munich, because when you go to Europe, you have to be married in a civil ceremony. They won't let you be married merely in a religious ceremony. And if you were in the Army at the time I was there, the closest place I could get married in a civil ceremony was Munich, even though I lived in Nuremberg.
Yeah.
I was stationed in Nuremberg. So I got married in the Amtsgericht, which is the marriage office, and the Oberlandesgericht, which is the district court.
Wow.
In Munich, and then I had to go back to Nuremberg and get married in the religious ceremony.
Yeah.
The next day. That was July 30th. That's, by the way, this July 30th, Jane and I have married 65 years.
Wow. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. And so then we spent the next, that was July 30th, 55. And I was released from the service in August of 56. And between those two dates, Jane and I visited Rome, Florence, Amsterdam, Paris, London, practically all of and every city in Germany except Berlin.
Wow.
And so we had a very full. We drove all those places, by the way. And my 48 Studebaker. You probably have never seen a Studebaker, but I can tell you, Ben, that time the 48 Studebaker was a little car that looked like it looked the same going forward or backwards. I mean,
wow.
And we laugh about anybody who knows will tell you that that's what the Studebaker looked like. And I bought it used. it to another GI when I left.
Wow.
But we drove it. We really had a fantastic. People don't understand if you haven't been there. Florence, for example, in Italy is the most fantastic place for art and sculpture. Michelangelo's David is in Florence.
Sure.
And Rome, of course, has all kinds of just everything. And Rome is a fantastic place. Actually, had we known, we would have seen Rome last, because Rome is so outstanding and so big. Everything else is anticlimactic after Rome.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of hundred color slides of all these places that I went, and it's just I love it. I love looking at it. I like to show my grandchildren and my great grandchildren. The only trouble is that half of them just don't. People don't really care much about history anymore, and that's too bad, because they miss a lot.
Right.
But of course, I'm a liberal arts type of guy, and
sure.
I believe, my favorite is English literature. I'm a Shakespeare buff.
Okay.
I've seen all of Shakespeare's plays at least once.
Wow.
It's the type of thing that I love English literature. I read all the time. I'm still reading.
Yeah.
I must have spent 2.5 hours reading before you called me.
That's great. Wow.
It's I fear I'm not necessarily the prototype guy that you see around here now, because most of them don't even understand what I'm talking about when I talk about this stuff.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. It is for them.
Yeah.
It is for them. However, I will tell you something. I talk to my grandchildren, especially, and they listen. They find it interesting. When I tell them the type of things that I'm telling you,
mm-hmm.
they don't move. They listen.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good.
Anyway, you asked me what that was the first job I had when I got out of law school.
Yeah, okay.
And when I got out of the service, I tried to get a hookup with a law firm here in Fort Wayne, and I had several offers, but because I was 11th in my class, and I was a law review. Yeah. I was on the law review board, so I was not a slouchy guy, but in 1956, they just, the best offer I got was $300 a month.
Wow.
And actually, that's what everybody else was working for at that time. And I shouldn't tell you this, but the one firm, the big firm, offered me $300 a month. And I said to the guy, I think I can starve by myself. I don't need any help.
That's funny.
And he said, maybe you wouldn't be very good at a big law firm. I said, I'm afraid maybe if you want me to work for $300 a month,
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Then I got lucky. I went around to different firms looking for somebody just to hire me, and nobody did. But one of the guys, Orvis Spears, who was at that time I didn't know him, but he was a big Republican. he said, well, I can't hire you. Our firm doesn't need a new guy, but we have a guy upstairs on the 14th floor of the Lincoln Tower, and he just left us, and he's got more work than he knows what to do with. Why don't you go see him? So I did, and I'd never met this man in my life. His name was Frank Soleric, and it was a 2-room office with a small place for the secretary and 2 chairs for the clients on the 14th floor of the Lincoln Tower in Fort Wayne. And he says, well, Adam, I can't pay you a salary, but I tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll give you all the work I can, and I'll pay all the overhead.
Okay.
And anything you bring in, you get 50% of, and anything you do for me, or you get 100% of, and anything you do for me, you get 50%. He says, you think you can do with that? I said, well, it's the best offer I got. And so I took it, and Ben, are you a lawyer, Ben, by any chance?
I'm not.
Pardon?
I'm not, no.
No. Well, I walked, he showed me this little tiny office I had, and when I say tiny office, you had to stand up to let one client sit down. I couldn't close the door unless you stood up, and it was that tight.
Wow.
But he walked in and brought me a stack of files about 3 feet high. And he put them on the desk, and he said, here, go to work. Turned around and walked away. And I'm looking at this 3-foot stack of files, and I thought, holy Moses.
Jeez.
And you got to remember, I was just 26 at the time.
Yeah.
And I really hadn't practiced law. I'd been in the service.
Right.
And I'd done a lot of legal work. I didn't tell you, but the legal work I did was all military legal work, and I did a lot of it.
Yeah.
But it's nothing like civil legal work. So, and I started working, and first year, obviously, I didn't make much money, but I made out. It got better and better as it went on, and I'll tell you, I like to tell stories that indicate what happened. I started with him in '56, and our second daughter was born February 1st, '58, and at that time, Jane and I were living in the front bedroom of my parents' house.
Okay.
And now we had two children.
Yeah.
And Jane says, we can't stay here. And I said, I know it. There's just too many people. She says, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, we got to find a place to go. And, of course, the problem is it was easy to find a place to go, but I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
Is the problem. But at any rate, at that point, an acquaintance that I knew, a Lebanese family, said, well, we're building, we just started an addition out in North Fort Wayne, and we'll build you a house and sell you the house and the lot for $15,500. What did I say? 15,500. I think that's what it was. 15. Anyway, it was 15,000. Let's say, and we'll sell it to you on contract with $2,500 down and $125 a month. And I thought, boy, that's great. And Jane says, where are you going to get $2,500? And I said, don't worry, honey. I'll have it when they ask me for it. And I went back to the office, and I pulled down one of these files that I was telling you about, and I opened it up. It was a personal injury case. and it was a good personal injury case. And I thought, boy, this is a good case. It's worth at least $100,000 to the client. And of course, I was green as grass. I had never seen a personal injury case. All I know how to do was I filed a complaint and a summons and sued him.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who later became my best friend, Bill McNagny, represented State Farm, who was the insurance, had the insurance for this defendant. And he called me up and he says, "This is Bill McNagny. Why didn't you call me before you filed this lawsuit?" And I said, "I don't know you." He says, "Well, I'm Bill McNagny and I represent State Farm." And I said, "Well, that's fine." And he says, the policy I've got is you're only entitled to $15,000. That's the limit. And I said, "Well, how do I know that?" He says, "I'll prove it to you." He hung up. He was on the 3rd floor. He came up to the 14th floor of the Lincoln Tower and threw the policy on my desk. And I looked at it and I said, "Well, I see that's what you got." I said, "Are you offering me $15,000? And he says, "No, I gotta justify my existence." He said, "How about 14.5?" Well, I can tell you right now that I was ready to accept that on the spot.
Yeah.
Because the guy was judgment proof. The guy that I was suing didn't have any money, but McNagny was not being nice to me.
Yeah.
The fact is, he knew that if he didn't deal with me well, I mean, honestly, I would have, and I sued and got a judgment, say $100,000, I would have sued the company for not dealing fairly, and I'd have gotten it, and Bill knew it.
Yeah.
So he offered the 14.5, and to make a long story short, I talked to the client. Of course, he accepted it. We had it on a 1/3 contingent fee basis. That is, if you win, you get a third. If you don't win, you get zero.
Right.
So the fee was about $5,000.
Yeah.
And I split it with Frank. So I got about $2,200, and he got about $2,200, and that was my down payment.
Yeah. Wow.
And you got to remember. Also, you have to remember another thing, man. Up until that time, I'd never charged anybody more than $75 for anything.
Wow.
Anything I had done. And so that was that's how we got started. After that, it got better, but I still didn't make an awful lot of money. But I didn't, I was going along.
Wow, interesting. So how many kids do you have?
6.
6, okay.
I have 4 girls and 2 sons.
Okay.
And one is a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
So my son Joe is a lawyer, and he is practicing here in Fort Wayne. I practiced with him, and he until about 4 years ago when I retired. Actually, I retired in '86, so it isn't 4 years. I retired in '86, but I was 86 when I retired.
Wow.
That's. I should tell you that I went along and I was making ends meet, and I decided that I needed some more publicity so that people knew I was around.
Yeah.
And that's why I ran for state representative.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And I did that in 1962. I ran for state representative. At that time, I was only 32. And as I told you before, I got elected.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Actually, Ben, my 2 years in the legislature were probably, the two I was in were probably as exciting and as different as anybody's ever had for 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
We, you know what? You probably don't even know this, but Indiana did not have a sales tax until 1963.
Okay.
We passed the sales tax, and it was a huge battle.
Yeah.
Because at the time, things were different then. Matthew Welch was a Democrat governor, and Dick Christine was a Republican lieutenant governor.
Okay.
That doesn't happen today.
Yeah.
It was then, and the legislature was barely Republican by about. The Senate was. I could be off on this, but the Senate was only 3 or 4 votes Republican.
Okay.
The House was much easier. The House was heavily Republican. I can't remember the amounts, but of course the big thing was the budget and taxes.
Right.
And sales tax. So nobody wanted, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans wanted to be the party that introduced the sales tax, or that passed the sales tax.
Yeah.
And particularly, Matt Welch didn't want it because he was a Democrat. He wanted to run for Senate.
Yeah.
And Dick Christine didn't want to be the one to get it because he was a lieutenant governor. He wanted to be governor.
Right. Right.
And so we spent the first 61 days fighting about it, and we couldn't do it. Nothing happened. So Matt Welch called a special session of 40 days. And so we spent another 40 days fighting about, trying to get a sales tax passed and pass a budget. By the way, at the time I ran, Ben, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
You know how much a legislator was paid at that time?
Probably not much.
$1,800 a year.
Yeah.
and so, in other words, I got $900 for the 2 months that I was supposed to be there in '63.
Yeah.
With no per diem. There was nothing per day. So I used up the $900 living down in Indianapolis.
Wow.
I made, I can tell you, I know what it is today, and it's like $2,200 plus per diem.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we got this extra session, and it went almost a full 40 extra days. Finally, the House passed the 7% tax. And it was like the second or last day, one of the very last days of the extra session. And so all of us, all 100 of the state reps went over to the Senate, and we sat in the aisle to see what they were going to do with this bill. And the place was packed. There was no room in the stands above. It was and the tension was touchable. It was so tense, and the Democrats had arranged it so that a couple of their people were sick. But what they did is they arranged it so that it was 50-50. There were if all the Republicans voted for it and all the Democrats voted against it, it'd be a tie.
Wow.
And that's what happened. And we all sat there. We all knew what had happened I laugh about this because the public doesn't understand this, but
Sure.
We sat there, all 150 of us, almost 150 plus the audience, and if you've ever watched it, they call out everybody's name.
Yeah.
And you look up on the board and you see everybody's name, and when it got done, the clerk says, Mr. Chairman, the vote is 48 to 48 or something like, whatever it was, and there was dead silence in that chamber. And Dick Ristine, of course, has to break the tie.
Yeah.
He's the Republican who doesn't want to be the guy that voted for sales tax.
Yep.
But I remember what he said. He said, to get this state moving again, the chair votes aye. And
Wow.
the place went up, and
Yeah.
there was cheering and laughing and screaming and everything else. And that's how we got the sales tax.
Wow. Yeah, it is pretty interesting time to be in there.
It was indeed, and I knew dozens of people in the audience. They'd come up to some of them were very good friends.
Yeah.
But as I said before, I was in one of the most interesting times that you could be in the legislature.
Right.
However, let me tell you something. I watch the legislature now, and you know something? Nothing has changed.
Really?
It's all, I'll tell you what it is. They're still arguing about the budget,
Yeah.
taxes, and reapportionment. We were arguing about that.
Okay.
We were arguing about that 60, 70 years ago, and we're still arguing about it. It makes me laugh every time I look at it, because it's changed. Don't misunderstand me, but the issues are practically the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's I forgot to tell you, I backed the right guy for Speaker of the House, and he appointed me to the Ways and Means Committee, which is the most prestigious committee
Right.
in the House. It's
Yeah.
the one that votes on the taxes and everything, and all the expenses. And for a freshman legislator to be on that committee, there was 18 of us, 18 people on the committee, and I was, of course, the only freshman on it.
Yeah.
And that was another thing. That's another reason why I couldn't run again. I was working 5 days a week. I never came home to Fort Wayne because the Ways and Means Committee was meeting 5 days a week, sometimes at night. So it was kind of tough on my wife, very tough on my wife.
Yeah, I bet. That's hard.
Yeah, but it was a great experience. I'll tell you something. I learned more about the state of Indiana in 60 days than most people learn in a lifetime.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a wonderful experience. I don't regret a single bit of it. I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say, it was fascinating. I had all kinds of things happen to me. I had one guy come. I was in the house, and a group of people came in, and they said to the clerk, "We want to meet the representative who answers all of our letters." And it was me.
Yeah.
I used to I took the tape recorder out of the secretary pool, and I put it next to my bed at the hotel, and I would dictate until I fell asleep.
Wow.
and then I'd send them all these letters. Otherwise, I could have never done it. But,
Right.
I just felt that I wanted to do it, and I was pleased that they all appreciated the fact that I was writing, I was responding.
Yeah, that's incredible. That really is.
But well, I pretty much I don't know whether I can tell you anymore.
Well, don't worry, I have some more questions.
Go ahead.
All right. So, when you first got involved in politics, were there any key legislative issues or anything that you were thinking about you wanted to work on?
No, not really. I did want. I wanted to see if I could get. I wanted the legislature to be more responsive, and I don't know whether I accomplished that or not. But
yeah.
I certainly I did try to do it. But there were, young guys like me, brand new freshman legislators, Ben, they don't make many. They don't have very much of an influence because you're too green. You really don't. I'll give you an example. One of the old-time legislators put a bill together, and there was a mistake in it, and I wasn't against it, but there was a mistake in it, and so I, being green as grass, I put together an amendment to make it correct.
Yeah.
The guy went berserk. He was a guy from someplace out in the country someplace, and he was just sure I was trying to kill his bill. And no matter how I told him that I wasn't, it didn't bother him. And he just gosh, he went crazy, and he he defeated my motion to fix it.
Wow.
And when I got finished, I'm walking, and they just pummeled me,
Wow.
And I got back, and I'm walking back, and the oldest guy in the legislature, can't think of his name now, took me by the arm as I went by, and he said, Otto, he says, next time you need something like that, just tell me. I'll fix it in conference committee, and nobody will even know what happened. I said, thanks. Glenn, I think was his first name.
Okay.
I said, thanks, Glenn.
Yeah.
Those things happen. There's a lot of funny things happen in the legislature, too. I put together a bill, or I didn't put together, this one guy who had been, an older guy who had bothered me with a bill that I just talked to you about. He put together a bill that was going to change the time for farmers to file their Indiana state tax returns to February.
Okay.
And I didn't care whether they did it in February or not, but this guy was the guy who had been really giving me trouble, and and so I learned quick. I got a good sense of humor, and the one way to kill a bill is to call it a lawyer's bill. That kills it immediately.
Yeah.
And so I got up, and the Speaker of the House recognized me, and I spoke a little bit about it, and I said, well, I don't know. The only people who would be helped by this bill are lawyers. So this must be a lawyer's bill. And the guy went berserk. He started screaming, no, it's not a lawyer's bill. It's not a lawyer's bill.
Oh my gosh.
And I've never forgot. I laughed at Glenn Schlinker, the guy that I talked to you about. He said you got even with him. But it was just too funny because I remember that well because the guy had picked on me, and I thought, well, I'm gonna get even, and we passed him. Actually, it was a dumb bill, and they didn't pass it, but it wasn't because of me.
That's funny though. Wow. You learned to play the game, I guess. Yeah.
Well, you got to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't learn it too well. I did that. I got a few things passed.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one. Here's something that that people don't understand.
Yeah.
I joined with a state representative from Michigan City named Bodine. Dick Bodine and I co-sponsored a bill to make the teachers' union, the teachers' pension, the state teachers' pension sound, so that there was enough money in it, and it was done in such a way that there would be no way that they would not get their money.
Right.
The only thing we changed was that the state was controlling that pension, which we were paying, rather than the union, the teachers' union boss, Bob Wyatt. Well, he was not going to have that. He was one of the two strongest lobbyists in the legislature.
Yeah.
And I obviously this was a bipartisan bill.
Right.
It was a Democrat and a Republican doing it, and the Republicans were fine with it. But the teachers union was all Democrats, and I would go to the other legislators, Democrats, and they said, Otto, I can't vote for this. Teachers will kill me. I won't get elected. And to show you how strong they are, one of the guys sent me a copy of the state teachers union newspaper, and the headline was, I'll never forget it if I live to be another 90 years. The headline was, "These men are your enemies."
Oh my gosh.
And it said Bodine, Bonahoom, Burning, and several, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
And of course, the bill got defeated. But
right.
The people who really got defeated were the teachers.
Yeah.
But but that happens.
Interesting.
You just gotta. It was hard for me as a idealistic 32-year-old to get used to that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did.
Yeah, I'm sure that can be rattling at first to become a target. Yeah.
But it was. I enjoyed being there. I can't say that I didn't.
Yeah.
So what else you got?
Yeah. So did you have any national, state, or local political heroes at all, or?
Well, I think at the time, I think I was a Robert Taft guy.
Okay.
He was a big conservative senator, and don't forget I was very young, and
yeah,
and it seems to me that that's the. But I really wasn't hung up on anybody particular. I got along with all these people, both Democrats and Republicans, so I really didn't have. I didn't have a problem with them, and I didn't sponsor any. You know, I was a freshman. I didn't sponsor any big bills because freshmen don't do that.
Right.
And I was not involved in the national issue other than here at home. I was a precinct committeeman and ward chairman.
Yeah.
And I was the parliamentarian for the Allen County Republican Central Committee, which means that I presided over all the elections. So I was involved, but not for myself.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when you were like campaigning to get elected, did you have any particular things you campaigned on, or?
I don't think so, but
Okay.
I did campaign differently, and that's one of the reasons why I got so many votes.
Okay.
All the other Republicans campaigned among Republicans. I
Yeah.
campaigned among the Democrats,
Interesting. Wow.
and I'm confident that that is the reason that I didn't spend a nickel.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
I never spent a dime of any any money. I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
I couldn't have afforded to buy a book of matches, for Pete's sakes, to give away. So I didn't have any. But and besides that, you got to remember too. I was doing a lot of the stuff with helping people that I told you about in the beginning of this interview, and those people knew it. And
Yeah.
a lot of them were Democrats.
Right.
And usually, people vote for people they know, or people that they've seen doing things that they agree with.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I got so many more votes. Simply because I think a lot of people who would have voted normally would have voted for a Democrat, didn't do it.
Yeah. Interesting. So what was your first election day like?
Rather uneventful. I didn't have any idea what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted that I now figured it out, but at that time I didn't have any idea what was going to happen. I ran and I got elected, and everybody was happy about it, and so was I.
Yeah. What were you thinking when you first walked into the State House for your first day in office?
I was impressed. I got to be honest with you. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, and
Yeah.
and I felt very good about it. But again, as I say, when you're a freshman, you kind of you take what happens and hope you don't look like an idiot.
Fair enough. Now, what were your expectations for the process, the legislative process, and was it more or less complicated than you expected?
Yes, it was. Well, there's all kinds of things in the legislative process that the average guy who's not involved in it has no idea about.
Yeah.
Things get taken. There's 100 different ways to get something done.
Right.
I mentioned to you before that I was thinking I'm just going to do the straightforward thing and get this bill amended, and I got killed doing it. Whereas I could have just had somebody in the committee amend it, and nobody would have known the difference.
True.
But I didn't know that, and there's you got to remember that there's politics in all of this.
Yes. Yeah.
So the things that you think ought to happen, there may be some political reason why it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
You don't know that, especially you don't know it if you're a newcomer like I was.
Yeah.
I learned quick, but it was a real learning experience. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So, what was some of the political things that maybe surprised you that you didn't understand at first, that were sort of going on behind the scenes, perhaps, or something?
well, there was all kinds of training going on.
Yeah.
That you don't know about unless you're there a while. The old timers knew who was trading what.
Yeah.
But a guy like me, I was just meeting some of these people.
Yeah.
And you got to remember that the Indianapolis delegation was the biggest delegation.
Right.
And I got to tell you, or I should say, a Marion County delegation. And the thing is, I discovered one thing at that time. Toward the end of the session, almost all the things that they were trying to get done, that is, the one delegation was trying to get done, they got done. After that, you couldn't get them to even talk to you.
Okay,
I mean,
wow.
They didn't care anymore. And I remember one, it wasn't just the big delegations, I can't remember where he's from, but one of the legislators who sat right next to me was from southern Indiana, way down next to the river.
Yeah.
And he ignored everything that was going on. And I know that because he was sitting next to me.
Yeah.
And and I said, well, what are you doing? He says, Otto, I came down here to get 2 bridges and a dam. He says, that's all I'm interested in. If
Wow.
I get my 2 bridges and a dam, that's all I care. He didn't care about any other bill that was passed.
Yeah.
He wanted he said, if I get 2 bridges and a dam, I'll get reelected forever. And that's what he was after. And he was one guy from a little country town. I don't even remember his name nor where he was from. I just remember he was from southern Indiana.
Wow. That's interesting, yeah. But it just shows just how many people are coming from these totally different places that have different agendas, so.
Well, everybody does. And that's the fascinating thing about the whole thing is that the other thing, these guys that everything can change in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
See, you go in and you hear everybody, you hear a committee report, and you think, well, that's what's going to happen. You walk out the door and somebody does something, and bing, bing, and all of a sudden it's all changed.
Yeah.
I got offered a job lobbying for somebody I can't remember a long time ago after I was out of the legislature, and I turned them down, and they said, why? And I said, well, because in order to do an honest lobbying job, you have to be there all the time.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to take a couple $1,000s from you and make it look like I'm helping you when I know I'm not.
Okay.
Because it won't work.
Right.
I said, it's a full-time job, and if you don't want to, I don't want a full-time job, and you shouldn't hire anybody unless he does it full-time.
Sure.
Because it's like I said, you walk out of the committee and you think the thing is set up, and in 5 minutes it's gone.
Yep. Yeah. Now, what was the first bill that you sponsored? Do you remember?
Yeah, I can't. Well, that one bill to fix the teachers' pension plan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Was one good. The second one, I had a friend that asked me to a barber who asked me to put in a bill. It was a minor thing with respect to the barbers' union. I can't remember what it was anymore, but I put it in and it got passed. But again, now, Ben, there's an example. It was kind of an innocuous bill. It wasn't anything special, and I remember a couple of the veteran Republicans that would good friends of mine, they said, "Well, Otto, this is a union bill, but if this guy's a friend of yours, we'll back it." I mean, that's all there was to it.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, if it hadn't been that I'd have been, and it got passed, and I don't even remember what it was anymore because it was strictly I can't remember. It had to do with how the union was run.
Yeah. Okay.
And the guy, but he knew this. The veteran guy knew it. I didn't know it.
Right.
I was, as I said, I was as green as grass.
Yeah, sure. What was the relationship like between Democrats and Republicans?
Generally, it was pretty good.
Okay.
We didn't have. We were all pretty friendly. Every now and then, the guy loses his temper, but
yeah,
that's just human.
Sure.
That's human. We didn't. I had a lot of Democrat friends down there, and they were good guys. But actually, that's it. I don't have anybody that we never got in any arguments that I can recall.
Yeah. What about the relationship between the House and Senate? Did you feel like there was a different power dynamic between the two, or?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't think that I don't think that was the case. I think that things were different.
Yeah.
But the Republicans controlled the House. The Democrats only were a couple of votes short in the Senate, so they had a lot more influence in the Senate.
Yeah.
If one or two Republicans didn't agree, nothing happened.
Yeah. How powerful was party leadership?
I think party leadership is very important and it's very strong.
Okay.
Particularly in the House.
Oh, okay.
The Speaker of the House. Most people don't understand this, Ben, but the most powerful person in the legislature is the Speaker of the House. Not the governor, not the lieutenant governor, nobody else. It's the Speaker. And the reason is because he has absolute control over the bills that are presented. And if he doesn't like a bill, he sticks it in his pocket and you never see it again.
Yeah. Wow.
That was one of the reasons why I was on the Ways and Means Committee, because I voted for the right guy. I voted for Dick Rustine, who was the Speaker.
Yeah.
It's kind of, another thing I forgot to tell you, I was the representative from Allen and Whitley.
Okay.
I represented 2 counties.
Yeah.
Now they're all divided up into numbers.
Right.
They're completely different. But at that time, I was representative from Allen and Whitley, and Dick Rustine, Rustine is the governor, lieutenant governor. Dick, I can't think. The Speaker of the House and I were very good friends, and whenever he would recognize me, he would always recognize me as the gentleman from Whitley. It was a kind of a standing joke.
That's funny, yeah. Now, did you feel like you worked with Democrats a lot to get legislation done?
I didn't hear. Say again?
Did you work with Democrats a fair amount to get legislation done?
Yeah, I did. I did quite a bit. Yes,
Okay.
I can't remember exactly anymore. It's been too many years ago, but I'm the kind of guy that you don't get anything done fighting those people.
Yeah. Sure.
And provided that you don't give up your principles, or you might as well cooperate and get stuff done.
Yeah, no, I understand. Now, you've kind of already highlighted this point a little bit already multiple times, but what does the public not know about the Indiana General Assembly and how it operates?
Well, the public doesn't understand the procedure.
Okay.
And that's the problem. And by the way, the other thing, half of the time, well, more than that, this is one that you probably didn't know and you probably would have never asked me. The news people who are covering the legislature don't know much more about it than the public does.
Oh, okay.
They misdirect everybody. I would call home and my wife would say, well, I see such and such happen. I read it in the morning paper. And I say, Jane, that's old news. That's not, none of that happened.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Okay.
And she'd say, but it says here in the paper. I said, honey, I can't help it. They don't know what they're talking about. The guy that wrote that. Also, some of them are not necessarily honest.
Yeah.
And I'll give you my best example. I'm annoyed about it even to this day. Of my dealings with the press. One night there was a big dinner given for the entire legislature, and everybody went, and there was nothing spectacular about it. But I was a member of the Ways and Means Committee, and of course, I told you, we met daytime and nighttime.
Yeah.
And so we had agreed, there's 18 of us, we agreed we'd leave ahead of the banquet, but we would do it in bits, 4 or 5 of us at a time. So it wouldn't make a big splash, and so nobody would pay any attention, we wouldn't disrupt anything. Well, as a result of doing that, we all came in to our meeting probably 15, 20 minutes late, sometimes a half hour. Well, the most was a half hour.
Yeah.
Well, John Compass was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, a real nice guy from Napanee, Indiana, and but he was a little guy, short guy, and he liked to tell everybody how important he was, and he probably would be mad at me for telling you and saying this to him, but he got up and started to make a big speech about, you guys, when I call a meeting for 8 o'clock, I expect all you guys to be here, and I don't want you out there boozing it up, and he carried on like that for a few minutes, and everybody knew it was John. We paid no attention to him because he was just making a speech.
Yeah.
The next morning, we all pick up the newspaper, and here's this article with a headline that made us sound like everybody on the Ways and Means Committee were a bunch of drunks.
Oh my gosh.
And he went on to write this whole thing, and I saw the writer, the reporter, who had attended every one of our meetings. I know his name right now.
Yeah.
I can tell you his name today. And I said, Steve, what the heck is this? This isn't what we do.
Yeah.
And I says, how could you write something like this? He says, I got front page and a byline all over Indiana with that story.
Oh my gosh.
I almost hit him in the mouth. I was so angry because he slandered all of us.
Yeah.
and there were evidence and
Jeez.
got away with it. But that happens. You just gotta accept it. But I gotta be honest with you, that kind of dishonesty bothered me. You can tell.
Right.
60 years later, it still bothers me.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I mean, that's tough. Jeez. How did your legislative service affect your family life?
It was pretty tough.
Yeah.
In my family life, because we had five. At that time, we had 5. The 5th child was born right after I got out of right after the legislature was over in '63.
Yeah.
She was born in April of '63, and that was too many kids to have and be down there. That's the reason I never went back. The people here in Allen County couldn't believe when I said I wasn't going to run again. They said, "My God, you're a shoo-in. Why wouldn't you run?" And I said, "You led the ticket except for one guy, but it just wasn't the right thing to do." So I did.
Sure. Now, what would you say was the most controversial legislative issue during your time there?
Sales tax, no question.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sales tax was the biggest issue.
Yeah.
And actually, sales tax, reapportionment, and the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are the things everybody was fighting about.
Right. And what piece of legislation took the longest to work out, or that you spent the most time working on?
The budget the budget's easily the hardest.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to realize, you probably have never, the budget is in a long book about 2 feet long.
Yeah.
And about 5 inches high, and it's a big, huge page, and we went through it line by line.
Yeah,
It took forever. And there's a lot of, I can't remember how many millions it was involved, but the biggest thing they thought about was the budget for health, as I recall. Otis Bowen, he was a state rep when I was there, and he later became governor.
Yeah.
Of Indiana. Knew him well, good guy, very, very he was a medical doctor. We couldn't pass the budget in the House, and he got together and made some adjustments on the health care that allowed the budget to pass. Interestingly, I didn't vote for it, and I didn't vote for it. There was only 3 people that didn't vote for it: the speaker, or the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and me, and another guy, and I can't think of his name. And the only reason I didn't vote for it was it was a matter of principle. I didn't object to it at all, but I voted. I thought we had done the right thing in the Ways and Means Committee, and this was a compromise in which Dr. Bowen compromised with the Democrats, and that's okay. He did it right, but I was just defending the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and as I told you, I'm one of these guys that said, I don't know, I felt like an obligation to him that we did not make a mistake. But anyway, that's what happened. You want to know something that's really funny?
Sure.
I knew Dr. Bowen very well, and I met him several times after he became governor, and he never forgot that I voted against his bill. He reminded me of it every single time I met him.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. Wow. What would you say was the proudest moment you had as a legislator?
Oh, I think that would have to be the passing of the sales tax bill. It was so hard to do. It was just so hard to get done, and we worked so hard, and we needed to do it. A lot of people would say, why would you want to be proud of a sales tax bill? The alternative was a graduated net income tax, and I was unalterably opposed to that because I had seen it in Wisconsin where they have it, and I had made tax returns out for Indiana people and Wisconsin people, and I can tell you right now that the Wisconsin, on the same amount of money, the Wisconsin resident paid about 3 times as much as the Indiana people did.
Wow.
And I wasn't about to I was not about to vote for a graduated net income tax.
Sure.
And so that was the reason for that.
Yeah. What?
Actually,
yeah, go ahead.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what, in your opinion, do you think is the most important work of the Indiana General Assembly?
The most important work of the General Assembly?
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty hard to say. I suppose the 3 big things that they have to go with every year, they've got to do taxes, budget, and reapportionment. Those are the things those are the most important things, and that's why they come up every year.
Right, right.
Today, Ben, there's a lot of other, and more I think about it, I'd have to think. At my time, that's what it was. Today, if I went over it a little bit, I think I might change it. I think that taking care of the welfare of the older people is of the elderly. See, most people don't understand that the fastest growing segment of society is over 80.
Wow.
And if you don't pay any attention, all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of, elderly people, in the poorhouse.
Yeah.
So you got to think about that. I'm not thinking about it from my own point of view because I am in that category, but and I'm not worried about it. But I know an awful lot of people who are, and they are in trouble.
Sure. What do you remember about the Civil Rights Bill while you were in the General Assembly?
I don't think the Civil Rights Bill, even though it was in the 60s, I don't recall that in Indiana, in our legislative thing, I don't think if we did, it was certainly not a big issue.
Okay.
Because I don't remember it, and I tell you right now, it probably should have been. But, but I don't believe it was.
Okay. So overall, now thinking just kind of in the big picture, how would you summarize your time as a state legislator?
I thought that it was extremely gratifying. I learned a tremendous amount about Indiana, and I also learned an awful lot about politics, so that I don't have all of the anger that so many of these young people have today.
Okay.
Anger doesn't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
Anger accomplishes absolutely nothing. And if I agree that there are plenty of things that we need to fix.
Sure.
But if you're doing it in anger, you're usually screwing up.
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing that I'll tell you that I'm absolutely convinced of. I never, ever act, if I can keep from it, in anger.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I do, I regret it. And many, many times I have written a letter. For example, I remember one, I wrote a letter and I was furious. And I looked at it and I thought, nope. I stuck it in my desk drawer and closed the door. And it turns out that had I written it, I would have screwed up everything.
Yeah. Wow.
You just don't write. You don't think well when you're angry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. What would you say is the biggest lesson you learned?
I don't think that you should ever assume that you understand everything until you have really investigated it.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have any regrets as a legislator?
Not really. I kind of wish I'd have been able to go back.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I just couldn't do it. I should tell you one thing before I forget it.
Sure.
You didn't ask me about the honesty in the legislature.
Oh, okay.
And I remember sitting there talking to a lobbyist, a good friend of mine. After I'd been there at least 60 days, I was probably in the extra session, and we were just chatting. And I said, I heard all about this business of how crooked all the politicians are, and I said, I've been here now all this time, and I haven't seen any of that at all. And I just think that's the product of somebody's imagination. And the lobbyist looked at me with a smile, and he said, Otto, nobody's going to offer you a bribe. And I said, well, I guess you're right. And what he's telling me is that I didn't see any evil because they didn't show me any.
Yeah, sure.
And of course I was, as I said, I was 32 years old. I was as naive as you can get, almost.
Right.
And but I still don't think that there might be one or two guys in the legislature that do something like that.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely, well, at least when I was there, I'm sure that there weren't very many.
Yeah. I guess it just sounds like a bigger issue than people realize. It's not as much, yeah. What advice would you give to future legislators or even current legislators?
Well, I'd like them to be less partisan and listen to each other and not be pushing their own personal agenda.
Yeah.
I think that we have a lot of the people, a lot of the legislators, they push something because it's going to make them look good, or it will further one of their own personal objectives.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should do that.
Sure. How would you say the state of Indiana has changed over the course of your lifetime?
I think it's changed for the better.
Okay.
I think it's changed for the better. I think that lots of things are better now than they were. They're not all better.
Right.
But they're certainly better than they were. including the big question today of racism.
Okay.
Indiana had a lot of racism.
Yeah.
In the past, and they've still got some.
Right.
It isn't as bad as it was.
Sure. How do you think the Indiana General Assembly has changed over time?
I don't really think I can answer that.
Okay.
I don't have enough information to answer that.
What about politics in the state in general?
Well, that's it. It has changed in this regard, Ben. The local politics is pretty much just like it was, I think.
Okay.
But the national politics has now it's a money thing. Who do you know can run for a national office unless he's got millions of dollars?
Yeah.
That's because we got primaries. I might as well tell you that I used to be a representative to the Indiana delegation, or and I think we did a better job of nominating people than the primaries do.
Okay.
The primaries, there's too much money involved in the primaries.
Interesting.
The only guy that can even think about running is somebody that's got a backer that's got millions.
Yeah. That is interesting. When thinking about the people in Indiana, what, if any, enduring qualities do Hoosiers still have or hold dear?
What? Say that again?
When thinking about the people in Indiana, what, if any, enduring qualities do Hoosiers have or hold dear still today?
I think they want honesty. I don't think there's any substitute for honesty. One thing, and I think that they want people who have the best interests of the general public at heart, as opposed to one's particular, as opposed to business or labor.
Right.
I think people want you to give them an honest shake.
Sure.
And I don't think it's a good idea to be closed-minded, which is some people are still.
Yeah. What do you want Hoosiers to know about their role in relation to the function of the Indiana General Assembly?
I want them to be interested, but I'm not sure there's any way to give them enough accurate knowledge to do that.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Right. Sure. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything that you want to say or talk about that I didn't cover?
I can't think of anything. I've elaborated on some stuff for you without your asking me.
Yeah.
I think I pretty much covered it, Ben.
Okay. Perfect. Well, that's about all I have for you. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this project, and it's going to be very helpful, I think. So.
I appreciate your calling, and I hope it works out for you. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Nice talking to you, Ben.
Take care.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.